Vishwamitra said, I would like to see that bow. Oh, first he introduced who is Ram and who is Lakshman, the children of Dasarat Maharaj in Ayodhya. And immediately Janak was thinking, if only he could take my daughter Sita in marriage. Because, well, actually, Janak told the story of the bow to Vishwamitra. He said, long ago there was a great battle of the Devas and the Asuras, and Lord Shiva personally gave his own bow to the Devas. But there was no need for it at that time. So the Devas handed it down, they gave it to my great forefather, and this bow has been worshipped within our kingdom for many, many generations. Now one day, when I was about to do a sacrifice, a yajna, for the welfare of all my citizens, I was plowing with a golden plowshare the ground around the sacrificial arena, and out from the earth came a beautiful golden girl. Her name is Sita, born of the earth, and she's so beautiful. In fact, Narada Muni told me that she's the goddess of fortune herself. So when she came of age, every great prince, every great king, everyone wanted to marry her. But if she's the goddess of fortune, she fixed her mind only on the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. So I decided to put a test that only a person who could lift this bow and string it will take the hand of Sita in marriage. And I knew only Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, could do it. So king after king, prince after prince, warrior after warrior, everyone is coming. This bow is it's so heavy that no one is even able to budge it slightly from where it's laying down. Even the mighty Ravana couldn't take it off the table. So Vishwamitra said, bring us to see the bow. So the next day, they had 300 huge, strong men pull this iron case into the center of the court of the king. Then they opened the lid, and there was the bow. It was made out of celestial wood, gold, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and jewels decorating it. Hundreds of little bells tinkling, but nobody could make it tinkle because nobody could move it. It was huge. And the word spread throughout all of Mithila that Ram, the prince of Ayodhya, has come and he's going to try to lift the boat. So everyone was praying. Sita was in a balcony in this special room where the bow was kept. And she saw the beauty of Ram from above. She witnessed hundreds and hundreds of other people come to attempt to lift that bow. And every time she prayed to the Lord, don't let him lift it. Because she saw every single one of these kings was arrogant. They were so proud of their powers, of their influence, of their beauty, of their high birth, of their wealth. And she understood that the greatest of all virtues is humility. She didn't want to marry an arrogant person. But when she saw Ram, not only was his physical beauty absolutely charming, but his demeanor, his character. He wouldn't even go toward the bow. Vishwamitra looked at him and nodded. Ram, I'm blessing you. Go lift that bow. Ram didn't take a step toward it till Vishwamitra gave him the instruction and the blessing. Just see, the Lord would not do it without receiving the blessings of his superiors, his senior. After receiving Vishwamitra's blessing, Ram very slowly walked up to the bow. And Janak Maharaj, his heart was palpitating like, if Ram can't do it, then there's no use in me living anymore. He was the queens, the kings, everyone there was just praying from their heart of hearts, please Ram, pick up this bow. And Sita, she was watching from the top with tears in her eyes. Her heart was fluttering, praying, pleading, begging, give Ram the power to do it. I've already given my heart, my life, my everything to him. And Ram made everything very dramatic. He stood in front of the bow for some time and looked at it. As all these emotions were happening in everyone's hearts and everyone's minds. Because, they were looking, his hands were so soft like the petals of a lotus flower, and his arms were so tender and smooth, and the bow was so heavy and coarse and hard, and how is this little prince going to possibly be able to do it? But he has to do it because no one else is qualified to marry Sita. And Sita, her whole life was on the line. She already gave her heart and her soul to Ram. And Janak had already in his heart felt there's no other man that can marry my daughter. But at the same time they vowed, that person has to lift the bow and string it. String it means bend it. So Ram stood there looking. The only person who didn't have any agitation in his mind was Vishwamitra Muni. Because Vishwamitra Muni knew the power of Ram. He's the Supreme Lord. Very interesting relationship. Ram asked blessings from Vishwamitra Muni, and Vishwamitra Muni understood that Ram's my Supreme Lord. Whatever blessings I have is only coming from him. It's like the way they worship the Ganges River is you take water from the Ganges and offer it to the Ganges. So Vishwamitra is taking the grace of God and offering it back as a blessing to the Lord. Then Ram put that tender hand in the center of the bow and just stood still, holding the center of the bow. Everybody's minds were just soaring with anticipation, unbearable anticipation. And Vishwamitra Muni said, lift the bow. Suddenly Ram, very fast, he picked up the bow and with his arms straight, held it over his head. Everyone gasped. It was inconceivable. It was incredible. It was unbelievable. No, even the greatest, most powerful people on the planet, many of them together, couldn't lift it off the table. And this teenage prince, Ram, just lifted it right over his head effortlessly. As effortlessly as a person just picks up a little piece of bamboo. Then he placed one end to the ground. Then he took the top end and bended it and put the string and strung the bow. There was absolute, total silence during this whole procedure. And then Ram just wanted, he already did what he was supposed to do. He strung the bow. But then he wanted to see what this bow is really made out of. So with one hand he held the bow up, with his other hand he pulled a string and he pulled it back until it was bent like a semicircle, and then the bow cracked. But it didn't sound like what I just did. It was thunderous. The entire earth shook. The chandeliers in the palace were going like this. And then Sri Ram very gently placed the pieces of the bow back into the chest. Meanwhile, Janak's eyes were filled with tears. It was the happiest moment of his entire life. And Sita on the balcony, she was smiling. She just wanted to jump and start dancing. But she somehow or other had to, because it was a very sober occasion, she remained very still and very shyly looked down as her heart was leaping and jumping and dancing in ultimate ecstasy. But she stood, and Dasar and Janak, he gave her blessings, said, Sita, come down now. And she came down, and she had the garland of victory. The garland that for years so many people strive for, but nobody could get near it. And Sita stood opposite Ram, and she looked down on the ground, very shy. Then she very slowly, her eyes lifted, beautiful lotus-like eyes. They looked up, and for the first time, the gaze between Sita and Ram, between their eyes, met. And at that moment, they both totally gave their hearts to each other. The relationship, their eternal relationship, was reunited. And they both gave their absolute infinite love to each other through their glance. And Sita then looked down, and Janak Maharaj said, my beloved Sita, offered the garland of victory to Ram. Then she very slowly approached, lifted her arms and placed that golden garland around Ram's neck. At that moment, everyone in the kingdom of Ayodhya was singing and dancing and praising, and flowers were falling from the heavens upon Sita and Ram. then Janak Maharaj said to Vishwamitra Muni, when should we have the marriage? Vishwamitra Muni said, immediately. So they sent messengers to Ayodhya. Took 3 days to reach there. And they came, because in those days it wasn't like internet. He and his wife were thinking so intensely about who could possibly be a fit wife for Ram. And they just couldn't conceive of who would be the proper wife for Ram. And just the day Vishwamitra Muni came, they were just discussing it and talking about it. And what appeared to be the worst possible thing, that Vishwamitra Muni was taking him away. Because even though it appeared to be a reversal in his life, because he reciprocated with the mercy, with the grace, the blessings of this sage, ultimately his innermost desire was fulfilled by Ram leaving. And then Dasarath said, immediately, we will bring our armies, we will bring our ministers, we will all go for the wedding. Took him 5 days to reach there. And Dasarath and Janak, old friends, they sat down together and made all the arrangements for the marriage. And Vashishta Muni was there as the head priest. Should I continue? I'll end real soon because it's becoming late. Vishwamitra Muni looks at Janak and said, as long as Ram's getting married, his 3 brothers, Lakshman, Bharat, and Satrughna, they should get married too. In fact, Sita has a sister, Urmila. She could marry Lakshman. And your brother, Kushadvaj, he has 2 daughters. Mandavi could marry Bharat. And Shrutakirti could marry Satrughna. And as soon as he said that, Janak kept saying, very good, very good, very good, very good. Again and again, very good, very good, very good. So Dasarath comes to Satrughna and Bharat and Lakshman, would you like to get married? Very good, very good. So there was a beautiful, they made a tent for this event. It was a magnificent, opulently decorated tent. It was square, 4 miles across. These are the days where kings were kings. They could do these things. It wasn't like the pandals that we use. It's gorgeous, more beautiful than a palace itself. And the marriage took place where Janak and Kushadvaj performed the Danyakan, Kanyadan. Kanya? Sannyasis don't know these. And thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Does anyone have a question? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj, for a wonderful class. I have a question about blessings. Should we aspire to have the blessings also of those who are not necessarily like qualified or even demoniac if our parents or our relatives are not so favorable to Krishna consciousness? Should we aspire to have their blessings also?
Yes, we should be looking for blessings everywhere.
If their blessing is you don't practice Krishna consciousness.
Why are you asking this question? It's very obvious. We want blessings from our parents, but at the same time, we have our path. Since I've been on this path, my parents have given me millions of times more blessings than before. Yes? So we should always be eager, but at the same time, we have the path of truth should be followed. Is there any other questions? After all, parents raise you, parents have given you so much, we have a debt to them. Yes?
Maharaj, this pastime of Bali Maharaj seems a little mysterious, bewildering and little confusing, in spite of the purports clarifying. In terms of few things, like we were discussing the other day, few days back, about the first thing is when Bali Maharaj performed this Vishwajit Yagya and he was going to conquer Indra. One of the persons who offered him his blessings is Prahlad Maharaj, and he offered him a garland of flowers that don't fade, and he's going to fight with the devotees, the demigods, and the brahmanas, others who are giving him a worship, who are blessing him to go and fight against the demigods. So the question that was asked was, are they really brahmanas, and how could Prahlad Maharaj also give his blessings? And was Bali actually a Mahajan, or he became Mahajan at that particular instance? Was he a great person before, or?
He became a Mahajan when he did Atmanivedanam. But we should understand that Prahlad could understand the will of the Lord of what was going to happen. So it's a mystery, but we can understand that these great souls, they could see into what was actually going to transpire. By Prahlad wasn't giving him this blessing for the purpose of winning a war. It may appear that, but actually Prahlad doesn't care about those things. Prahlad was giving the blessing of getting the shelter of the Supreme Lord and attaining the perfection of spiritual life. That was Prahlad's blessing. And because he got the blessing of Prahlad, look what happened. He got the opportunity to attain that perfection, and he took it. Yes? Prahlad's blessing is very powerful. Blessing of a pure devotee. It opened the doors for Bali Maharaj to attain the highest perfection. And when Vamanadev came to beg from Bali, it's a complicated story that would take a couple hours to tell. But when Vamana came, it wasn't just because Aditi performed the Payavrata for her children. It was also because Prahlad Maharaj was praying for his grandson to get pure devotional service. And Bali Maharaj was humbling himself to receive Prahlad's prayer, blessings. So it's actually a very, very deep story. We can't just see these in a superficial way. Does that answer your question? Prahlad gave his blessings, and the immediate thing that happened is Bali Maharaj conquered. But if he didn't conquer, there would be no reason for Vamanadev to take everything away. So really what Prahlad was blessing him for was to ultimately to go through whatever he had to go through to get the Supreme Lord's grace. And how much the Lord hears the prayers of someone like Prahlad. Even Hiranyakashipu was liberated. What to speak of Bali, who was actually a very great soul, always. Is there one more question? Yes, Vrishabhanu Prabhu.
Maharaj, oftentimes we receive respect and we sometimes also offer respect to others. But how to ensure that it never becomes a ritual but a heartfelt, true spiritual activity? Otherwise, many times we see that kind of mechanically it is done. But how to see that every time we offer respect, it is not a ritual but something endowed with the spirituality and love of the heart?
That genuineness develops according to our own realizations. So certainly we should consciously, whatever we do on the path of bhakti, it should be from our heart. It shouldn't simply be a mechanical thing. And through developing deeper realizations from within ourselves, then whatever we do, whatever we say will come from that place where there's very, very deep, sublime feeling. And essentially, unless we have a grateful heart, we can't really be respectful from the heart. Gratitude is all important. Otherwise, respect is just a mechanical formality. But if we're actually grateful, and to be grateful, you have to be humble. If you think, I deserve so much, then you're not grateful for anything that happens. You may go through the formalities of thank you, but are you really thankful? If you just eat a massive feast and someone comes and gives you some food, you're not that grateful. But if you're starving and someone gives you some food, you're really grateful. So if we have an arrogant disposition, then people will give us and we'll say thank you, maybe. We may say thank you, we may not, as a formality, but we're not really grateful. We don't really mean it. But when we have a humble disposition, we're really grateful. Not only for the good things, but even for the reversals and the difficulties. Because we see in every situation there's an opportunity to grow. There's an opportunity to learn. There's an opportunity for wisdom. There's an opportunity to turn to God and take shelter, even in the difficult times, as well as the good times. So a grateful heart sees an opportunity in every situation. A humble heart, and is grateful for that, and is actually thankful. So even if we're following a spiritual path, and even if our parents may not agree, we're still grateful to them. We're still thankful to them. We may be following a higher principle, but still there's love, and there's gratitude, and there's thankfulness. Yes? What to speak of others? Srila Prabhupada, even when drug addicts on the street, laying on the street in the Bowery, would open a door for him, from his heart of hearts, he would say, "Thank you." And he meant it. He was thankful to them because they did something for him. They helped him in his service to God by opening that door. He was probably more thankful to those drug addicts and prostitutes who were sleeping in the streets of the Bowery, who opened a door for him. He was probably more thankful from his heart to them than when saints give us wonderful things for us. Because he had that humility. And he could access God's blessings even in those situations. Because he had a grateful heart. Now, how to achieve that? First, we need to want it. And then we cultivate it through our actions, through our words. And most of all, we access it through cleansing our own hearts. By making that spiritual connection within ourselves. In this age of Kali, the most direct way of making that spiritual connection is chanting the names of God. Does that help to answer your question? Even if it's kind of for... A machine doesn't have a motivation. Yes? So even if we don't have realization, if we're respectful, because we really want the realization, because we want to please people, because we want to enrich ourselves, and we want to show compassion and actually honor other people, if we have that desire, then it's not mechanical. Just like any ritual. If you're just performing a ritual without a serious spiritual intention, then it's nothing but a mechanical ritual. But if you're performing that same ritual as an expression of our desire to love God, to purify our own consciousness, then it's not mechanical. Because machines can't think like that. It shouldn't be mindless. It should be mindful. And this is the way we should chant God's names as well. Thank you very much.